Okay, we got a recap of UFC 281, Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. We're going to start with the prelims first to get those out of the way. We're going to take a look at what we got right and got wrong. But first, the performance of the night went to $50,000 to Alex, $50,000 to Zhang, and the fight of the night went to Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. There was no surprise.
Yeah.
But ironically, two people who missed weight probably would have got it if they didn't miss weight. They just weren't eligible. Mike Trizano and Ryan Spann. They both had good performances, but they didn't qualify.
Yeah. But based off Carlos' loss, we were going to pick Nicolae, and we were going with him.
Yeah, because Nicolae, he done had so many split decisions, and he's had some real gritty fights. One thing we did say was Carlos, in order for him to win, he would basically be looking for a sniper shot. You did say that.
Yeah.
But it's just the chances of that happening. Because how many times have we bet on somebody like the striker if they can land the perfect punch? I've lost so much money doing this.
And he had to do that, but also avoid the brawl too. Because we see him against Kennedy, he got sucked into like a firefight, and that's how he ended up getting knocked out.
Yeah.
So he had to do that against Nicolae without actually making it like a slugfest.
Hey, he did a good job, I guess, getting him out of there in the first round, because the deeper the fight goes into round 2 and 3, and you get more tired, and then Nicolae, he might start getting takedowns. It makes it a little bit more rough for you to do that. But because he was able to get him out of there so early into the fight.
Yeah, I wish Nicolae could have weathered the storm and got to the second, third round.
And, I kind of said that too. Like, I kind of said something to the effect of, I can see Carlos dropping him, but then Nicolae surviving and start wrestling and pressing him up against the cage. Like, that was one possible outcome, but, man, Carlos just got it done, man. So congratulations to him. I think that might have been Nicolae's first time being finished in the UFC, at least.
Yeah, I think it's his first time ever being finished.
So that was crazy. It was bad too, man.
It was bad. It looked like there was no way he's gonna win that fight.
No, Carlos was on one. Now, Montel Jackson and Julio.
But yeah, that's what we predicted. We predicted Montel to dominate him and just win in every aspect of MMA.
But he didn't really do that.
Yeah.
Don't be confused by the unanimous decision. It was like 29-28. What really saved Montel was the fact that he threw a jab that dropped Julio in the third round. If it wasn't for that, I mean, it was probably 1-1 going into that. But Montel Jackson, he fell back into that thing he talked about where he won't throw the left hand. He's tentative. Julio was very active with his jab, but he had to be careful because look at what happened. He didn't even make a mistake. The jab landed for Montel and it dropped him, and it cost him that round, which cost him that fight. But it seemed like Montel was a step behind, even though he seemed to be the more dangerous person. Like, he has all the tools, but he just won't do what you would expect him to do with it. And so it was a good win. It was a W. It's hard to complain, but
it's not the worst thing because we see knockout artists come out and they get overly aggressive and they make mistakes, kind of like how Terrence McKinney kind of do sometimes, and they get finished. So, I mean, I understand why fighters, they are more calculated, more technical, they're more...
But it wasn't that. It was tentative and seeming lost in the striking at points and just flat out not doing anything at certain points. Basically, if Julio didn't stand there, let him knock him out. He just wouldn't, he wouldn't do anything. And Julio was walking him down. I mean, don't be fooled by the scorecards at all. This fight was closer than what you might think. But, I mean, it was a good win for Montel, man, but it looked like the same. It looked like JP Bays, except for he just didn't drop Julio as many times. It basically was that. And Julio just did a little bit better. Well, not a little bit better. He did a lot better. But, I mean, you in the 135 division. How you going to fight Adrian Yanez? How you going to fight?
It's not that. It's just he's inconsistent with his approach. Sometimes he comes out aggressive. Other times he don't. So it's like, do you have faith that he can get the job done against somebody in the top 15? He might win a close fight, but we talking about
at some point you got
against Ricky Simone.
Don't even mention his name right now. He ain't even ready for that. So if we go look at what did it say he was? What was his rank? I don't even see him.
I don't think he.
27. Yeah, he's too inconsistent as far as even fighting. Casey, we ain't seen him in a minute. If we go and look at who could be a possible next opponent, maybe Rafael Assunção. He just come off a win, but that's a winnable fight because Rafael kind of has been fighting a little bit safe because he was on a bad streak. So
that'd be boring.
But you know what? You know who just won? Chris Gutierrez. So if they make that fight, Chris is going to be more active. He's going to pull the trigger. And I'm not saying put yourself in danger with it. You should, because a lot of people say, "Oh, you just want them to put themselves in harm's way." No, you can fight and be dangerous, but be calculated at the same time. Like look at Adrian Yanez. Look at how Chris Gutierrez fights. But when you get into these rhythms where you don't do nothing and you back up against the cage the entire time, man, I just can't imagine that's gonna be imagine him fighting Jack Shore or even a Saeed or somebody. Like it's gonna be bad. So it's a good W. We live to fight another day, but I don't know. I know he's been kind of loyal to his camp. They mentioned that during the post-fight interview. But man, it might be time to start looking for different pieces to put together because the tools are there. And this is one thing they were saying after the fight, saying the tools are there, but it's just something ain't there. Like something is a little bit missing. But
sometimes when you train with people who you're better than, you just ragdoll. Sometimes you step into the octagon, and because you haven't had that type of like training against people who are like top level, top notch, sometimes it can affect you in a bad way.
Man, you can look at Montel Jackson at his actual tools because he got submissions. He been wrestling people. Obviously, he got power. He got striking when he chooses to actually strike. You could say that Montel Jackson that's well put together could compete with any of those guys at the top. Any of them. I'm talking about top 15, top 10. Imagine he can keep the fight standing up and these guys are forced to strike with him and he can drop you with a jab. And that was a jab. That wasn't even a full blast left hand.
Even like a Umar would struggle with the fight.
I didn't want to say it, but that's what I was
He can't get the fight to the ground.
And at least he could beat up Saeed and Nurmagomedov. But I'm saying if everything comes together. So, hey, the future is bright. Yeah, I know we kind of own him, but it's just because when you see people got certain skills, you want to see them be able to use everything because you can't fight forever. And you don't have forever to get it together. But what were you saying about the Saeed fight?
No, I was just saying I think that would be a good one. But, that was just it.
It'll be a good name, too. But they got to give him somebody that's going to challenge him, man.
Yeah. Because you can't like Saeed pull the trigger all the time, too.
No, he gets tired. But now we have another fight. Mike Trizano and Seung Woo Choi.
And Seung Woo Choi, we just got through talking about how Montel Jackson don't pull the trigger. And we see how many mistakes Seung Woo Choi makes when he goes for it.
But there is a big range between Montel Jackson not pulling the trigger and Seung Woo Choi almost acting like, I don't even know how to describe this. I was trying to think about it yesterday. It's like basically 0 to 100. No, it ain't 0 to 100. It's 0 or 100. Man, he had Mike Trizano hurt so many times. Hold on, my fault. He had Mike Trizano hurt so many times and still managed to lose that fight. And he was going for it, but it just wasn't intelligent. Man, remember how Anderson used to break people down, but he would do it in a way where he wasn't getting hit at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes that extra effort. It takes that extra gym work. But you can't play this game of, I'm either going to sit back and not do anything, or I'm going to go in and be overly aggressive and get knocked out. Because that happened a few times tonight. We'll talk about it, but
I think one thing that's hurting him is 0 submission wins.
Yeah.
Seung Woo Choi.
Because a lot of those losses, he dropped people. If he had submissions, he could have took them to the ground and followed them up because Mike was hurt. And I want to say Mike got hurt 2 or 3 times.
But this is horrible. Seung Woo Choi has 3 losses in a row that should be W's. This is horrible. Like, all those people, Alex Caceres, Joshua, and Michael, he was winning and he found a way to lose. He should be on a 6-fight win streak.
But see, that's what I'm saying. In the prediction, I didn't understand who is he training with because the tools are there. He's hurting everybody. He's dropping them. And then he's just going crazy. And then before you know it, he's finished. It's the strangest thing. If you start watching the beginning of a Seung Woo Choi fight and you come into the room 3 minutes later, he's submitted or something crazy has happened. And it's so confusing. It's like, what happened?
I think it's a nerve thing because a lot of fighters, they fight their way, like Michael Chandler, they fight their way because it helps them get peace of mind, especially the night before the fight. Because the average fighter is nervous. They think about, what if I lose? What if I get knocked out? But if you say, you know what, I can always fight aggressive and not fight at my best, because if I lose, I can blame it on that.
Mike Trizano apparently is having a child in February, so congratulations to him. And he had a lot to prove tonight, and this was the last fight on his contract. So if he didn't win this one, bye-bye.
And he's in a tough spot, man, because I don't have faith that he's going to repeat this type of performance. But at the same time, he is coming off multiple knee surgeries. ankle injury, so he had like a lot of stuff that a lot of unfortunate things that happened to him. So maybe we're looking at a refined version of Michael Trizano, or at least back to his former self.
And he had a great opponent to do it though. But Seung Woo Choi is a different type of man. Seung Woo Choi might be one of the top 10 to top 15 fighters who make the most mistakes in a fight that I've ever seen outside of
Melvin
Gillard, Pat Barry. Who else? Who else would win fights and then just lose out of nowhere because of something they did? Not necessarily because the opponent did something spectacular.
Cutelaba. Fighters like Cutelaba and Karolina, they do the same thing.
Man, it is the most frustrating thing because, like you said, he should be on a win streak, but yet you on a 3-fight losing streak in fights where you dropped everybody multiple times. It's unbelievable. But Mike Trizano, he stuck with it, man, and he cracked him.
I'm going to be honest. I don't have no faith that he's going to do this again. And he fought great, but just he fought a certain way so many times in the past that this one performance, he has to do this 3 more times.
It wasn't that. It was more. Seung fought terribly. That's what it was. Yeah. And Mike kept his composure. He didn't do nothing spectacular. Like, he just kept his composure. And you can pretty much wait for Seung to do something that he ain't supposed to do, and he'll get tired after a while, and that'll be game over. So, hey, Mike did what he had to do, and I guess he'll be signing a new contract, and they'll be working it out. So, hey, that's good. But as far as Seung Woo Choi, I don't know what's going on from here.
He more likely gonna get a knockout in his next win. He might get like 2 knockouts in a row.
You think they're giving him another chance though? Maybe because
he fight exciting.
And then they need the Asian fighters for the cards. The Asian cards.
Yeah, he Korean too.
Yeah. So they'll keep him around, but he got to win. I mean, he needs to change camps. Like, he got to.
And a lot of times fighters, they do that over and over again. They get put in a certain category where it's like, I'm gonna just the Darren Tills. I can hurt my opponent, but I'm gonna find a way to lose.
Yeah.
So mentally, can he compete again and feel confident enough to win?
I don't think about that. He's still, how old is he?
30.
He should be getting ready to put everything together. Now, this is when you start getting on a win streak, because now you done had some wins, you done had some losses. Now it's time to start stringing those wins together, because you shouldn't be making the same mistake 3 times in a row at this point. So, and he got the perfect name too, Sting, because it seemed like he be doing a lot of damage for a little bit of time, and then it goes away. 3 losses in a row definitely stinging. It'll get a new camp, man. But, well, not a new camp. I don't want to be disrespectful, but they need to start doing some different things, because there's too much talent going to waste for a good, excited fighter. But then we had Karolina versus Sylvana, and I don't know, man. I wasn't overly impressed with Karolina. It was a good survival win. It was a good win for the record, just to have another W and be further and further away from that bad streak she was on. But she basically took Sylvana down and controlled her back for the first round, and then kind of outstruck her for the second. But I didn't think it was that bad. It was good to see her get a W. I would have liked to see Sylvana do a little bit more. I feel like she got a lot to offer, but she kind of looked stale. She was just throwing the jab, just trying to land that same punch, that overhand right, and it just wasn't going. Karolina was fighting smart.
But that's what I said that before the fight. I said Karolina only been knocked out once against Jessica Andrade. She's not susceptible to get knocked out.
But why is it that knockout seems to be clouding over her career for some reason? I don't understand, because she only been knocked out once.
I understand it, but even if you look at the losses after that, they really came to her. She made a lot of mistakes taking people down and getting submitted, or either she just get out grappled completely. But it's not like she's been knocked out 3 or 4 times in a row. It was always her making mistakes, which is getting out grappled. That's why I was saying, stylistically, can Sylvana even beat her? That's what I was thinking before the fight.
She probably could have, but she messed up in that first round. You know how sometimes the fighter get taken down and control that first round, and at that point, you just behind the 8 ball if you can't land anything significant. So that was what her mistake was. But hopefully Sylvana can get back in there, and Karolina looked good, so she'll be back again. I don't know against who, but she fighting 115. So.
And I can tell you one thing: if you can't stuff Karolina's takedowns, it gets worse.
What she did, it's just they got caught up.
I'm saying like the first round, she got controlled. So against Mackenzie Dern,
but she won't be fighting Mackenzie for a very long time. But you got to remember, Sylvana had 2 submission losses by armbar. So a few fights ago, she would have got armbarred. Because you know how you can take the back and then you can transition to the arm. That would have happened to Sylvana 2 or 3 fights ago. So the fact that she was able to even survive that was good. But shouts out to Karolina. She did a good job.
Speaking of good job.
Now, speaking of great job, hey, I was wrong on Matt. But again, we know it's different versions of Matt. That was the thing. You get different versions of him, and you never really know which one you're going to get. And see, this fight was good, but you know what'll happen the next fight?
He get knocked out.
He get knocked out in 30 seconds. That's why it was...
I'm going to tell you one thing. Somebody dropped the ball, man.
Boy, did he.
Man, because 100% takedown defense. He didn't have to worry about Matt taking him down. He's going to stuff the takedown.
And then he really forced a knockout on himself because Matt was just swinging and Ottman was steady running into it. He literally was running right into Matt. Matt hit him clean. And I'm like, man, put your hands up at least if you're going to swing. And Matt just kept eating him up with that left hook. And man, he put him out bad.
But that's if you look at Ottman's fights, he had a couple fights on his record where he kind of bum rushed them and threw a bunch of punches and got them out of there. And he tried to do the same thing, got countered. And maybe Matt is the one to do that because he got the live by the sword, die by the sword type of style. Because any other Terrence McKinney not going to throw hands with him like that. He going to either try to take him down or try to stay on the outside. But Matt going to exchange punches because Matt's kind of fearless. Because if he was fighting against anybody else, Paddy ain't throwing punches at the same time as Ottman. They're going to look for different approaches. And Matt he's careless, like he's fearless enough to throw punches.
It worked out this time.
It didn't work out against Marcos Reyes, and it worked out against Terrence McKinney.
But hey, and then again, sometimes you hold those losses, and maybe it's just him at a turning point where he's like, you know what, I done have some unnecessary losses on my record. Because that's one of the things that it was hard to pick Matt going into the fight because he's had some head scratching losses that could have been wins or just more competitive. And
he really only got a couple losses though.
Yeah, but again, they've been very head scratching. Like Terrence McKinney, that was a short notice fight, man. You had a full training camp. I just didn't understand.
I'm gonna tell you, the good that comes from this for Ottman is he had a lot of fights that ended real fast, and maybe he can say, you know what, I can be beat because he got away with so much he got away with doing so little, if that makes sense. And maybe he can go back to the drawing board and say, okay, now I need to improve my striking. Yeah. Because my striking was not really good.
Well, his striking defense and his timing, like something was definitely
there's certain things he can always improve. Maybe I can throw more kicks and stuff. I can't just throw 10 punches in 2 seconds and try to get it. Because it worked against Kama. What's his name?
Kama Worthy.
Yeah, it worked against him because that's the same thing. He blitzed him. He blitzed Kama and he knocked him out. But he tried to do the same thing with Matt, and Matt they do punches at the same time, and Matt landed.
Yeah, and so Matt moves forward. But Matt is one of those guys who got all the tools, but he got to be consistent and he got to put all the tools together. He looked great last night, but now we need that performance again for people to have faith in you.
The last two fights, he looked good.
Well, yeah, but that was a jiu-jitsu, like a pure jiu-jitsu guy who didn't want nothing to do with no stand-up. But so, yeah, Matt is on a 2-fight win streak now, so that's good. But you got to be consistent because now you just took out a prospect here. So now you're going to be moving up and probably fighting. Who you think they might be giving the next?
Matt Frevola
at 155.
Michael Johnson fighting. You think that
I think Michael Johnson got a fight coming up.
Oh, Michael fighting Mark DeCasey.
Oh, yeah. And that's funny because that's what I was going to suggest. He's number 34. They definitely doesn't make this fight. Maybe like a
Nasrat. Perfect.
Yeah.
Hunter dropped down to 29. Bro, he was just like 12.
Well, not
well, dang, he really dropped down.
That's what happened. He has to be in the USADA pool for 6 months before he even get in there because he looking crazy. He's looking crazy. You see how big he look?
Fighting at heavyweight when he come back.
You see how big he look? Oh yes. Man, I thought that was a Photoshop picture. But anyway, yeah. So Matt Frevola, maybe like a Nazareth, and just start slowly climbing your way back up. Don't say nothing too crazy because the last 2 wins you did go balls to the wall. And you can't do that every time. So let's just play it cool. Let's get the next one in. So now we got Andre Petroski and Wellington Turman. And I will say this, man. Turman looked good in that first round. His striking looked good. It was crisp. It was sharp. He beat the leg up on Andre. Andre looked tentative. He looked nervous. And he basically got his butt whooped that first round. His leg got compromised. He had to switch stances and go southpaw because he ate a few leg kicks. And so he was trying to hit Wellington with this overhand right. And basically he just knew he had power, but the actual striking wasn't the best. But in that second round, he started grappling and he started mixing in the grappling with the submission attempts. And at one point he had Wellington in a submission and looked like Wellington went to sleep for a minute and woke back up. So
And I was curious to see if they actually start grappling who would have the advantage, which I thought that Petroski, if the fight hit the ground, I thought the fight would be over. But then again, Turman, he's no joke on the ground. But I thought Turman could do enough, like just to hold him against the cage and survive, which he did. That was.
But you know what was so funny was Andre, his cardio held up better than I expected to because he looked gassed after the first round. I don't know if that was nerves, but they brought it up during the fight. They said that in his losses, he would get tired.
Oh yeah.
And he said that he had been training and figuring out how to conserve his energy better. But he did look completely gassed after the first round. But once they started doing the grappling, his body is used to being able to grapple under fatigue. And so he was able to, you know how some strikers, they can be tired, but they can still be striking for, like Alex did, basically. Which we'll talk about that. But, hey, Andre looked good. Andre looked great, but Wellington did look good. Because a lot of times, Wellington, he folds in fights and he looked for ways out. But he's starting to mature. So it was a good fight for both guys.
He's only 26. Wellington's only 26, so he's not older.
Oh, yeah.
He's young, so he still got time to improve. We seen Charles get finished, get embarrassed, and come back and reach his prime when he was older. So, I mean, so it can happen.
He looked good last night, even in the loss. You know, he survived as far as his heart and his willingness to stay in there, even though it wasn't going his way, and still just being scrappy. But Andre's grappling looked amazing last night. He didn't get the submission, but that's because Wellington's so good on the ground.
Andre, he has improved his striking though, because I never was a fan of his striking. Like he has power, he has some power. He doesn't have a crazy power, but he has some power. But I don't like the way the overhand left over and over again, man. And it's just a horrible sight to see when you switch stances and now you're throwing the overhand right.
Let me go here and see who will be a next good fight for him, actually. Because that striking going to need some help. I'm a little bit concerned. Okay, so I want to say Rodolfo has a fight coming up, we know. Now, Jun Young Park just won a week or two ago. That might be a good one.
Ooh.
I think Julian has a fight coming up.
Yeah, he does. Julian Marquez.
So, but I think Chitty is too far up. Because even his loss to Gregory, he still looked good.
I don't think he's too far up. I just think Andre might beat Shitty because he has the advantage on the ground. If he can get this fight to the ground, which he more than likely won't, but if he can, then
a few years ago I could bank on that, but now Chitty just seemed to maybe a Bruno Silva. That'd be a dangerous fight.
Ooh, Chris Weidman.
I don't think Chris fighting, man. I wouldn't. Maybe Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Well, it's a few fights. I think more than likely, maybe a Jun Young Park.
It's not a good matchup for Andre, but I mean it'd be a good fight. I don't think it'd be an easy win for somebody, but I mean
who is the somebody?
What's his name?
June?
Yeah, June, because he do enough striking to avoid big shots.
Yeah, but he rely on that grappling too, and if he wouldn't be able to,
but a lot of times he don't have to get the grappling. Like his striking is good enough so he could just do enough. He could do a little bit more than his opponent,
and then that cardio.
More. Yeah,
and then that cardio. Say it again. That he'll fight more.
Oh yeah.
Say. He'll do enough to fight Bora.
Oh yeah, he'll fight Bora and do enough just to win the fight, especially get into the third round.
Yeah, and then I think that cardio will be a little bit too much for Andre at this point. Now this fight right here, man, this was, one thing is we've always seen the UFC try to protect people like Molly who are fan favorites, especially somebody who got a country supporting them. And I made a comment on Twitter that's getting a lot of traction. This is the reason why Patty is fighting Jared Gordon and not Terrence McKinney. This example of this fight right here. This is why they protect certain fighters. Because when I tell you this fight was not remotely competitive, and Molly is good. Like she's done some things in the last few fights. But Erin is on another level. It speaks volumes to Molly's toughness because she could have kept fighting those type of people. The Hannah Goldies and who was the girl she beat? Before
some of the Asian girl.
No. Well, she didn't win that fight, but
Luana.
Yeah, Luana. Yeah, she could have kept fighting people like that, but she took the Erin Blanchfield fight.
But was that smart? Is that a smart thing?
It wasn't. But
my thing is, of all people, Erin, of all people, man, I just don't understand. Like it'd be different if she would have said anybody else. But Erin might be fighting for the belt soon.
But I think Molly was trying to fight for the belt. And so her mind was saying, if I can beat Erin with the win streak she's on, she would have had 4 in a row. 2 of them would have been finishes at least by knockout. you can make the argument that one more win and Molly could have been fighting for the title. Imagine a woman fighting for the title in the UK. Have we ever seen that? A UK woman fighting for the title. She could have made a very strong argument and she might have gotten her way, especially if she had beaten Erin with a finish, but woulda, coulda, shoulda.
I'll tell you one thing. I guarantee you Valentina was like, she was going for Molly to win this fight. That would be the biggest mismatch probably in UFC history for a title shot. If Molly some kind of way won against Erin and fought Valentina, easy win.
Because with the women's divisions, let's just call it what it is, you don't necessarily have to win 11 to 12 fights in a row like the Leon Edwards and the Tony Fergusons and the John Fitches. You string together 3 or 4 good wins, and if people know at least the last 1 or 2 people that you beat, you can get a title shot.
Because we're gonna talk about her in a little bit, but Jennifer Maia was 3-2 in the UFC and got a title shot.
Oh my!
You know what I mean? So I mean, that just shows you like it could happen.
But Erin made sure that didn't happen. It was not remotely close at all.
I can see her throwing Valentina down. Because you gotta understand, people can say, well, that's crazy. You gotta understand, Miranda Maverick, that's her game, the wrestling. Nobody takes her down like that. For her just to be picking the Miranda up and throwing her, that just shows you how good her wrestling is and how strong she is. If you could take Miranda down, you definitely could take Valentina down.
Erin is like a version of Khamzat, but just for the women's division, almost.
And it's weird because if you look at her, she's not really intimidating, and she's almost like she's quiet. She doesn't really talk a lot, and she just seems like she doesn't even look like a fighter. She ain't the most intimidating fighter. But then she goes out there and she just ragdolls people, and it's just like, what does that come from?
Man, that was a scary performance. But like when she had her in that crucifix. But this is why Patty is not fighting Terrence McKinney. This is why Patty's gonna be fighting Jared Gordon's and what's his name, Jordan Levitt's, and he gonna be fighting those type of people, especially after this. He is not fighting no dangerous person who got an actual chance of beating him, because they got to keep that streak alive. Again, luckily Molly's in the women's division, so...
And another thing is with Patty, I'm not going to keep talking about Patty, but he can improve. He's improving. Is Molly really improving? She's getting more aggressive, but is she really improving, though? I don't think her game is getting better. She just fighting...
In her division, she kind of is naturally better than a lot of them.
Yeah, true.
But there's tiers. Her best is just not at the level of...
Even Valentina's on her worst day.
Yeah. So then, speaking of worst days and bad days, and first of all, I'm not a Dominic Reyes hater. What they do is, I mean, it's unbelievable. But man, I don't know where to go from here for this. But because a lot of people were saying maybe he should drop down and wait. I mean, we've seen this a lot. This goes back to where when we first started watching fighting, and we saw Gray Maynard, the title match against Frankie Edgar, where he dropped him all those times, and for whatever reason they scored it for Frankie. I think he lost to Frankie twice, and it was like,
whoa. It was a draw the first. No, he won. Then he beat Frankie. He won the first time. The second time was a draw. The third time he got knocked out. Yeah, they fought like 3 times. I forgot about the first time.
I actually forgot about that.
Then he beat Frankie.
I think he took his undefeated record actually. But you know what's so funny about that? It's once he lost that title fight though, it set off a chain reaction of just holding a bunch of L's, man. And it's like his career was never the same. And then we saw it with Johnny Hendricks. And then we saw it with Carlos Condit. And then we saw it with Alexander Gustafsson almost. But Alex did get 2 more title shots. He fought Daniel Cormier and he fought John Jones again in a rematch. But other than Alex getting all those opportunities, when fighters lose close matches to the champions, largely dominant champions, or champions that just can find ways to win, even if they're not the most dominant, they can just get it done. Man, it's hard to come back from that. And then the Jan fight was a war, but Jan was getting the better of it. The Jiri fight was a war for a while, but then Jiri kicked it into another gear. But then it just...
How can a 6'4" specimen drop down to middleweight? People don't understand how much weight they cut to make light heavyweight. And then another thing is, even if he fought, it'd be the same thing that, who did that? Somebody dropped down... Was it Frankie Edgar? It's like, no, Dan Hooker. Like, you dropping down to featherweight unnecessarily, man. Like, you losing to the guy who's a champion. You literally lost to somebody who's a champion. Now you dropping down to... That doesn't make sense.
Man, my thing, should you drop down or should you fight somebody outside of the top 10 or 15 to get your confidence back, to just get a W and get back on track? It's funny, everybody else's record got Ion Kudalaba and Misha Serkinov and all these type of fighters that they give you to get your record back on track. The Carl Robersons, and when you keep taking these tough fights, and people can say whatever they want to, But Ryan Spann is very dangerous, at least early on in the fight.
First round.
Now, in the post-fight interview yesterday, he said that he ain't never trained for a fight. I don't know how true that is or to what extent I don't understand. But he said he has never trained for more than 3 weeks for a fight. And when you kind of look at his fights, it looked like that because he normally start off real strong and he tries to dive on certain things. And if he can't get it, then that's when things tend to go south. So
I think we'll never know the answer to that until we see him in the second and third round in a back and forth fight.
Well, he gonna get
against
it
like a Magomed or somebody. But
well, no, that's too much. That's too much.
Yeah,
that's too much for anybody almost. But
and it's weird because he got the talent to beat him. It just something just missing.
Maybe that's those 3 week training camps. Well, one of those weeks is fight week, so it's technically 2 weeks. So maybe that's it. But whatever the reason, he's always had the talent and skill, but just putting it together. He was either going to win by a knockout or submission. Either way it went last night.
I hate to see guys like Dominic Reyes lose, and like because Dominic Reyes he had so much heart, and guys like that they not looking for ways out, but they just get finished.
Yeah,
and it's kind of sad to see, man, because it's not like, oh, I don't want to be here. I'm looking for what's the guy named Derek Minner. He got a couple losses. Was kind of like I don't want to be in there, but Dominic Reyes he wanted to be in there. It's almost like his skill set is not good enough to be fighting against these guys.
I got a question. His skill set don't look bad. It could be improved. But the chin thing, I don't understand because John didn't knock him out. So I don't understand how the 3 knockout losses came out of nowhere because, again, it ain't like he getting beat down and then he's falling and just turning over. I don't understand. It's like
he's a one-trick pony. He's straight left. I actually made a short about that. I just made a short about that and put it on our YouTube channel where before Dominic Reyes fought against John Jones destroyed him when he said, we watched your highlights. It was just straight left, straight left, straight left. And then Dominic Reyes responded and said something along the lines of home runs win or something like that. It was like, bruh, that's your response. And that just shows you that's his go-to is the straight left. And that's all he has. So that's...
Or all he uses.
All he uses. Well, that's all he showed. That's all he's showing.
I'm like, for Ryan Spann, man, look, I ain't saying go crazy with this. He should have pressed Ryan up against the cage. That way you're not fully on the ground, but you're not fully out in the open for that to happen.
Ryan Spann, man. You end up on your heel. Ryan Spann been flipped him over.
Look at what happened anyway. You got to give yourself a chance. If this is the final outcome, regardless, in real life, if this is what happened, then anything else is almost better than this.
It was like every time Ryan Spann landed, it hurt Dominic.
But then he got knocked out with a jab. That was the crazy part. It wasn't even a full punch. And Ryan, again, now he said this out of his own mouth. He only really trained for 3 weeks. A lot of his fights, if you can get the fight into the not even round 2, but into the 3rd and 4th minute of the first round, if you can just make it action-packed and like drain his energy, you can find different ways because he'll start making mistakes. I don't want to say looking for a way out, but you know,
he has to
kind of looking for a way out.
But he has to get in deep waters to test himself because that's the only way. Guys like him, like the Anthony Johnsons, that's why it's good for them to win decisions because now you know mentally, okay, I can go 3 rounds. How can Ryan Spann fight in a 5-round fight against Alexander Rakic or against Jerry when you can't even go 3 rounds? So sometimes it's good to go and win 3 rounds, man. But I wouldn't do that against Dominic Reyes and give him a chance to win.
Meanwhile, Jerry going into his bag in round 5 with 50 seconds left and making history. That's the type of cardio and heart you need to have to compete. So
it was odd because Dominic Reyes was training with Alex and Glover this fight, which it was kind of odd because Glover and Dominic in the same division.
No, but they are so far away from each other, it's not even close.
I understand that, but if Dominic Reyes would have won, I'm thinking about this, right? If Dominic Reyes would have won this one, and they say the next fight he fight Magomed, and some kind of way he wins.
He was not fighting no Magomed. That was not. He is not nowhere near Magomed. Yeah. He would need 3 or 4 wins, and they would all have.
But sometimes guys who fought for the belt, sometimes they get leaked.
Nope, that's over for him.
No, not now. It's over for him now.
Even last night, before this happened, that was over for him. He needed 3 or 4 solid wins to prove that you're not finna get knocked out in 2 minutes if you get a title fight. So that was never gonna happen. And the reality is, by the time he won 3 or 4 fights anyway, Glover was just gonna get his belt back, maybe defend it once and retire. Glover not finna fight 5 more times. So that makes sense.
But but I'm saying I brought it up because Glover's style that doesn't prepare you for Ryan Spann because you already had a takedown defense naturally, and that's what Glover brings to us. He's a strong grappler. So why bring
it
in
like he only training with Glover? It's other people there, man.
That's how I would like to see him train with other people. That's what I was saying.
His problem is getting hit. You can't get knocked out in practice.
It ain't that. It just you have to present something else. Imagine Dominic Reyes versus Jamal Hill. What he has nothing to. Jamal Hill doesn't see nothing that he's going to respect. He's going to just walk him down. it's easy to walk people down when like they're not. Like you can't just walk down Anthony Smith.
But I'm saying his problem is the chin now, and it's so funny because y'all defend Dominic Reyes.
Okay,
but y'all hate Cody Garbrandt.
I'm saying, but you saying chin, but I'm saying you're not supposed to be getting hit like that anyway. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but not being prepared for it ain't gonna help either. Because the Yan fight was body kicks, it was leg kicks, punches to the body. It was a mixture of things. Yan really was hitting him on all three levels. I mean, legs, body, head. Jerry hit him with a Hail Mary spinning back elbow, and that was a brutal knockout, man.
You know what I think it is? I think the UFC's light heavyweight top 5 is just so scary. Maybe every fighter ain't meant to just be a top 5 fighter, especially in light heavyweight division, because it's murderers roll up there. The light heavyweight division ain't the best division in the UFC right now. But we start talking about getting into top 4, top 5, man, it's straight killers up there. Dominic Reyes, maybe he just not that guy. His last win comes over Chris Weidman. You know what I mean? So it's like your last win don't even come against light heavyweight.
A natural light heavyweight.
Well, natural. Technically he is light heavyweight.
Dang, man, that's crazy, man. That's just...
But he's talking about noise against John Jones. I beat John Jones. I can beat John Jones.
People kept getting mad, and I'm standing on this. Every interview, you talking about John Jones, and people say, well, they're asking him about John Jones. You're a grown man. Tell them, hey, I'm fighting such and such. Don't ask me about John Jones. That man is his own man. He going up to a whole new weight class, possibly taking that belt the way it's looking. So ask me about who I'm preparing for now. This is where my energy is going. There's no reason you should have been talking about John Jones every time you get on a microphone. I'm sorry. That lets me know that mentally, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you got to get to that place where you accept it, man.
And not only that, but there's nothing wrong with talking noise. You just got to let your fight. Because Usman, Israel, all them guys, Marvin Vettori, they all be talking to Paulo Costa. But you have to like separate the two. You can talk noise and promote yourself, promote your fights. But when you step in the octagon, you got to take care of business. And that's what I was noticing before this fight. Dominic Reyes, it was a lot of hugging, a lot of joking. Not joking like bad. But you can tell he wasn't all the way focused. Even like years ago, he was more focused years ago than he was this fight. But I mean,
but he got a great fan base. But I think that last night was kind of it's sad, man. I feel like Dominic had more fights in him before it got to this point, because what he's going through right now, this is what people who've had long careers go through. He really had a short career. He only got 16 fights. Remember, he been knocking people out in 1 or 2 minutes. It ain't like he just had this long old career.
I don't think he could beat Khalil Roundtree.
Oh, they should never make that. Oh, no. And speaking of Khalil, that's probably who Ryan fighting next.
Oh, yeah.
They'll probably make that fight. They kind of hovering around the same space, and they tend to like to put people like this together.
Message.
So, you know, they'll do that one. So,
speaking of doing something, Renato.
Man, first of all, let's talk about that post-fight microphone work, which was impressive, man.
Yeah, he said I fought on short notice. I fought Jose. He said he fought somebody on short notice.
Rafael dos Anjos.
I want my money. He said, pay me. I want my money. Did he get a bonus?
No, but you know what's so odd? Why was that fight 5 rounds against Rafael dos Anjos when he took that fight on a week's notice? I don't understand. That didn't make no sense. And the funny part is he was actually doing good on the feet, and Rafael started taking him down.
It was dirty, man.
So he basically just used the cardio against him, which, I mean, it's a fight. You got to do what you got to do.
And it's funny. It's funny how sometimes things happen, and it's they might end up fighting again, because Arcee lost last fight, and if Arcee lose again, which he typically don't lose 2 in a row, but if some kind of way he lose again and Renato win again, they might actually meet, because you fought on short notice now. We
always talk about this. We don't just like fighting, and we don't just like fighters inside the cage. We be thinking about their career and their long-term career and business and everything. And Renato has gotten to a point now where his strength of schedule has been ridiculous. But look at his fights in the UFC. Jeremy Stevens, Brian Ortega, Calvin Kattar. I told you he fought Calvin.
I don't remember that.
Cub Swanson, Jose Aldo, Korean Zombie. Anyway.
Oh, he beat Calvin? Oh, crap. Ooh.
Hey, Rafael Fiziev. Bro, this is a ridiculous schedule. Like, this is insane. And he didn't have all those fights at the time. You got to remember, he's 17-5 now. So at the time, you got to think 6-7 fights ago, you got to take off some of these wins, some of these losses. That you still young in your career to be fighting people at that level. But Renato is at a point now where he's starting to realize, no, I need my money. I done took short notice fights. I done been in there with the best guys. And I don't know his financial situation, but at some point you start realizing, no, if I'm taking a short notice fight, I want more money. if I'm fighting these high level guys and the margin of error is so low, and I gotta put in the work, and I gotta pay people to have me prepared for these type of guys, that costs money. I need money to put up for my family. That costs, you know, I gotta have money to invest and do everything because I can't fight forever. I'm sure he got injuries. And now when you get older and you start getting mature, you start recognizing like, wait a minute.
It's funny when a lot of fighters are young and they're like, I fight anybody anywhere, and they start getting older, they get up there in age, and I was like, oh, I want to get paid now. It's like, bro, for all the years when fighters was talking about I want to get paid, you didn't say nothing. Now all of a sudden I'm not gonna say he's in the later ends of his career. He might just be in his prime. Renato might not even be in his prime yet. But at the same time, like now he's starting to understand that I need to get paid more. And it's like, yeah, but a lot of fighters don't speak up. When Kun Lee was saying, oh, we should get paid more, nobody was saying that.
Quarry. They had all these lawsuits they've been losing because fighters won't stand up when those guys they finally got different lawsuits and stuff going. Nobody will support them. Well, I don't say nobody, but very few people will support them. Usually it's older guys. But the whole time the older guys are fighting, the younger guys, oh, I'll fight anybody, anytime, any place, you know, whenever, wherever.
Mm-hmm. It's, you know, something's wrong.
I'll fight anybody, anytime, any place, wherever, you know. In the middle of a tornado, I'll fight. I'll do anything. I'll fight. Oh, one day notice, yeah, I'll fight the number one guy and, you know, just go out there. You get beat, then all of a sudden losses start piling up. It's hard to get big fights because your name, the brand, the marketability, and the branding behind it is tough to put your name on a poster or to get people excited for you or tune in for ratings or buy pay-per-views. Now you get older, you get a family, right? You get older, you want to buy a house. You get older, you tired of sleeping in the gym and sleeping on people's couches while you train for fights. You see, people are starting to recognize you all over the place, and yet your finance is not really where you would like them to be. And now all of a sudden you started fighting when you was in your teens or your 20s. Now you're 30 something. You might want to get married, start a little family. You ain't really got the money for all that. You know you got injuries. Now all of a sudden you want to start talking about fighter pay. Yeah, but the whole time the older guys are fighting for that, you were just completely not even interested in ignoring it. And now you're turning into that older guy. And now when you fight for it, the younger guys now they'll be the ones taking the fights that you don't take because they willing to risk it all. And it's like a vicious cycle, and the only person winning is Zuffa.
And I was gonna say, you know something's wrong when Jake Paul is fighting more for MMA fighters to get paid more than MMA fighters. You know, so that's true. Nobody talk about that.
Yeah, that's true, man. Jake Paul has mentioned it more times. Well, when you in the UFC, you can't really afford to be talking crazy either. That's another thing, like that scare tactic.
Yeah, you be matched up against 5 wrestlers with knockout power.
Oh man, we talk about it all the time. You will get matched up with 5 people who are the best wrestlers you ever seen in your life, who never been submitted, never been knocked out, but they got knockout power and they got submissions and they got cardio, and they train with Khabib, and you know you ain't finna win. You finna get matched up with 5 people from Dagestan, and you finna eat 3 losses in a row, and you finna be going home or going to Bellator or ONE FC. But they starting to figure it out now. They just got to figure out ways to, you know. But Brad Riddell, man, we talked about this last night. What were you finna say about Brad?
I was gonna say he made one mistake when he had Renato's back, and which he is so stiff, you know, like it seems like he don't have it seems like he don't have the hip mobility and flexibility to submit anybody. But he had Renato's back, but he didn't really get the hooks in. It looked like if he would have just went for it, he probably could have got it. Because Renato does have a couple losses on his record where they kind of like steamrolled him. They steamrolled him and got the job done. But Brad, that was his only opportunity he had. But then when it came down to it, he was just throwing punches, throwing hooks. He just made a brawl, man. He was damn near closed his eyes throwing punches.
One thing that I'm not really liking is people saying Brad Riddell is washed. He fought Fiziev, Jalen Turner, and Moicano. But these are 3 dark horses in the lightweight division. These are 3 guys who all of them might go way further than people give them credit for. And I'm going to tell you this. He beat Jamie Malarkey. He beat Magomed. He beat Alex Da Silva. He beat Drew Dober. He should have never been a top 10 lightweight anyway. I know he was number 10. He should have never been up there. These wins do not make you a top 10 fighter. And now you fight Rafael Fiziev. Then you lose that, you got to fight Jalen Turner. Then you lose that, you got to fight Renato. None of these fights should have happened. He was not prepared for none of these people.
Who you think feel worse, Dominic Reyes or Brad Riddell?
Dominic Reyes, because he had an actual title fight, and Brad Riddell was never close to a title fight.
And he been knocked out 3 times in a row. Brad was knocked out 3 times in a row.
So Brad should have been fighting. He should have been fighting these Thiago Moiseses, these Joel Alvarezes, these Bobby Greens. This is his. I would even say Drake Carlos is probably too high up, but maybe a win streak on Brad Riddell, maybe this fight. Now, these are the type of fighters he should have been fighting. He was never a top 10 guy. I don't even know how that even came about. I don't know what was going on with it. Maybe it's because Khabib retired and then shifted things around. Then Conor didn't fight.
The only thing is, nobody said that then, and that's what's kind of interesting because at the time it was, when he was on that win streak, it was like, oh yeah, Brad, he the next big thing.
But look who he fought.
Look what I'm saying? It was a lot of people that was like, oh yeah, Brad, yeah, he that man.
But see, that's what happens when people just start jumping on board or something and not looking at it and saying like, wait a minute, he beat Drew Dober, relax.
He never really finished nobody in the UFC, man. So,
and he really still ain't got that many fights.
You would have thought that Brad had like 4 or 5 knockout wins, the way they were talking about him.
He only had 11 total fights when he fought Rafael Fiziev in the first place. Like, come on, y'all, we gotta relax. So that man ain't washed. He just was fighting above his tier. Yeah. So give him somebody. This is what they're gonna give him. Because now Claudio just put on one of the worst performances. So now he just showed that he about to be the person that they give you when they want to put you back on track. If you are primarily a striker and don't want to fight on the ground, because he's a jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, but he can go and he submitted people before who he should not have beat. You know what I mean? So like because the thing is, Dan was in a whole lot of trouble, man. Like some kind of way he got out of it and got to 2nd round, but he almost didn't. Yeah. So like you gotta understand, if Claudio was fighting against Brad make a lot of mistakes in his fights. I don't know why he does that.
You know what I'm starting to realize? City kickboxing seems like they jiu-jitsu ain't where it need to be. Am I tripping, or the only person who ground game look like it's decent is Volkanovski?
But at the same time, you gotta understand, Dan Hooker only been submitted by Islam. It's not like he's been submitted by.
No, but I'm saying in general, because we gonna talk about the Israel fight, and obviously we know Carlos don't want that fight on the ground. Luckily, he's able to keep it off the ground, but
I think they just specialize in just avoiding the ground.
I know it's called City Kickboxing, but good Lord. Bro, I thought that was just the name of the gym. I didn't know y'all was only doing kickboxing. I thought that was just like it's a good name.
And we've seen Volkanovski in trouble too against Brian Ortega.
Yeah, but luckily he got some jiu-jitsu. I don't know where he got it from. I don't know, man, but luckily Dan Hooker survived and got a W, man. Claudio, again, he's in this weird thing. He's in that group with like Jordan Levitt and these other guys who got amazing jiu-jitsu but no wrestling.